My name is Akshay. I'm the product manager for Captivate and presenter. I've been with Adobe for about more than 5 years now. And it's always exciting to be at the Learning Summit and talk about exciting things for us going forward. And this year is the most exciting thing for us has been responsive learning. And so this has been one of the sessions that I've been looking forward to for a long time. With me is Anita. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Anita Horsley. I'm the president of Calyx Learning Consultants, and I've been teaching Captivate instructor-led for probably 5 years now, as well as online teaching. And I also do lots of presentations for Adobe, so it's exciting to be here. I'm very excited about this presentation.
Yeah, and Anita is Captivate crazy, as you guys know.
My Twitter handle is Captivate crazy.
Yeah, so a quick show of hands for us to get a sense of how we want to take this presentation, because this topic is really, you can't really expect to be an expert in an art, but we want to take you in the direction of learning what are the essentials of responsive learning. And after the key takeaway that we want you to take from this session is what are the areas that you would like to invest in responsive, and what are the areas that need attention and things like that. So a quick show of hands on how many of you are already creating mobile projects today. That's roughly about 30%. How many of you are planning to create it, let's say, in the next year or so? And how many of you plan that to be responsive? Okay, so that's a good number. And that's a good number for us to start off as well. And we've been, there's been some concerns with moving to responsive. There's been some concerns with a traditional way of looking at e-learning. And those are things that we will address through the session. And let me quickly get started. So before we dive into the session, a quick sense of how we'll go through the next hour. So I will take you through what led us to building responsive the way we have in Captivate. What is the core problem we're trying to solve? And there are different schools of thought, and we've gone with a certain school of thought, and it's not really set in stone, right? And this is absolutely, I don't have a comparison in mind similar to Captivate with the way we've built responsive. So we are evolving along the path, and through the process, we want you to help us and let us know what you feel and what your feedback is and using this tool, so we evolve it in the right direction. So I'll give you a sense of that, then Anita will take you through what people are doing today, how people are looking at responsive. What does responsive design really mean? What are the elements, and how do you think about it? Is it the same way that you think about traditional e-learning? So when you were designing e-learning for the desktop primarily and versus responsive, what are the tweaks that you need to do? How do you look at these things? And we'll end the session by taking you through a couple of customers who have done things around responsive and how they went about approaching it. So the first piece that, this is something that we're well aware of, and I won't spend too much time on it, is we all understand that responsive is becoming a bottom-up phenomenon. Whether you want to accept it or not, it's something that you have to deal with. You have to put out content that will cater to multiple devices. And wish it was as simple as this image looks, as if you could output to 4 devices and your life was good, that would have been an amazing place to be in, but unfortunately that's not the case. The kind of fragmentation that you deal with mobile devices is kind of unimaginable. Like even when you go back 3 or 4 years back, we always believed that there were smaller resolutions, and they were just treated as 2 buckets of resolutions. And if you put your content in those resolutions, you're done. But unfortunately, that's not the case. There's a lot of gray areas in between. And to add to the gray areas, there are different platforms, right? All these phones don't run the same operating systems. They don't work on the same browsers. And of course, you have the big elephant in the room is still the desktop. You can't really leave that behind. Now you're talking responsive. You can't say, I'm going to leave what I did for the desktop behind, and I'm going to move and try and create stuff for mobile. So you have all these considerations in place, but when you think of responsive, it's really not what it's, what it's projected to be. It's not really as simple as it is, because once you put your hands in and try to design a project where, in quotes, you say mobile first, it takes away a lot of things that you were already doing for your desktop, right? In the desktop, we're used to putting in a lot of things in one place and then pulling things out. That's the mindset that we begin with. But when you look at responsive, it just starts the other way around. You just have to absolutely figure out what is the absolute minimum that you would want to put in a project, and then incrementally add stuff and see if it's adding value or if it's actually making the design much worse, right? So what's happening so one of the key things that through that process is what we've learned is responsive for the web is not responsive for e-learning. And, it seems like, a kind of a fancy statement to make, but it took us more than a year to figure out that it's not the same. So when we went out and when we thought that, folks in e-learning have a problem to address learning content for, mobile devices, we went out and looked, what are people doing today? And a lot of people who used web tools, and I know Dustin's in the room, and he's a big fan of, how responsive for the web has evolved. We have, when you look at responsive for the web, and when you look at the kind of content that's out there on the web, the control over what that content looks like is kind of flexible, right? You're okay with certain sections automatically missing out. You're okay with certain sections going below the fold. You're okay with certain interactions changing, right? Or you're okay with a summary of a text arriving on the mobile phone, but on the desktop, you have the full length text. You're okay with text reflowing into multiple columns into one column. You're okay with the interactions going below the fold. You're okay with a ton of things. But e-learning really cannot accept those things, because when you look at instructional design, one of the fundamental things is to be able to have that control, is to be able to get the learner to do exactly what you've designed for that learner, right? And now it becomes a complex challenge, because when without Captivate 8, when we went out and looked at what people are doing, people essentially did that, designed for 3 or 4 separate projects, and it became a problem to deliver it, right? How do you deliver 3 or 4 pieces of content together? So that's a big problem, adding to, the design piece. So reflowing text is something that, we spoke about. The last piece is, I think when we've looked at responsive design, at the cost of compromising on some of the other things that responsive for the web stands for, right? In terms of some of the more fancier and more, catchy elements, what we believe is we've built Captivate 8 with instructional design at the core, which means that you have absolute control over the layouts, the way you place your elements, and like Alan showed, in the demo, you can also control the text, right? And you can also choose to inherit properties. You can choose to break it. So what essentially it means is you have 3 different projects in one, right? And what we also take care of is when you put out these projects, we take care of when the learner accesses it from that particular device, that version gets served. You don't have to worry about how do I serve the iPad version to the iPad? How do I not serve the desktop version? So we have the intelligence built in, the content intelligence, to figure out where to serve what piece. So given that background, I'll hand over to Anita to talk about some of the design elements that are at the core of getting started with responsive. And given her background in e-learning, she'd be able to take you through the mindset change that's required as well. Over to you.
Thanks, Akshay. So one of the things Akshay said in the beginning is the way we're going to kind of work this is we're going to do a little bit of theory, but I'm more of a practical applications type person. So are you guys okay with me showing you the actual application and how to do it and everything? So I'll do a little bit of theory, a little bit of design stuff, and then we'll actually get into Captivate and show you some of the ways that you can position and resize the objects in your slides. So one of the huge things of responsive is that a couple weeks ago I went to Texas teaching a class for Sean Mullen over there, and they had 900 courses, 900 instructor-led courses that they wanted to convert into e-learning. So and that's a lot of the situation that a lot of us are in. So we didn't traditionally have the ability to do responsive, so we created scaled projects. And so now we're what we're calling retrofitting these other courses into a responsive course. So how do you do that? The example that I gave you, the scenario example that I've given you in your handouts, is a course that is just a mock course that I created using some of the e-learning art scenario-based training stuff, but it was traditionally for a non-responsive project, and I just made it responsive. So that's that's a huge deal that we're all looking at, is how do we convert all of these non-responsive projects into responsive quickly? Well, there's no way to do it quickly, but it's one of the things that we're concerned about. The other thing is that traditionally, without responsive, without Captivate 8 coming out, mobile first was really the way to go if you wanted to create a course for an iPhone or a cell phone. So it was, like Akshay said, kind of going the other way up. So going from small to large, kind of like what the web does. And then we get to Captivate 8, which is we're trying to create one course that can accommodate 3 different or multiple, not just 3 different, but multiple size devices. And I'm gonna take you into that. So these are just some ideas about designing E and M learning. So if you have a tablet or a laptop, you have a bigger landscape. So you have more real estate on the screen. But then when you get down into a tablet, you have to change the way that the objects look and feel on the screen, and then there's even way less real estate on a mobile device. So you have to understand the design. Here's just another mock-up example. So on a mobile device, you could have your links, your banner. It's just set up differently. So when you start creating responsive design with Adobe Captivate, it's just like anything. There's no magic pill, right? There's no one click and boom, it's there for you. You have to have some creative and design sense of how you want it to look and feel on the screen. And that's going to be different according to the size of the device. So these are just some examples of, these were come with Adobe Captivate 8. This is one of the courses that comes with Adobe Captivate 8. So as you can see, as the size gets smaller, the objects change in position and size. So that's really the bottom line of responsive design, is object size and position changing based on the real estate of the size of the device. So I'm going to get back into Captivate here. All right, so how many people are already using Captivate 8 and have opened up a responsive project? Okay, so not too many of you. So a lot of you are seeing this for the first time then? Is that true? Yes? Okay. So how many of you use Captivate 7? Quite a few of you? Okay. So if you haven't used it before, you'll notice that the real estate is different in Captivate 8. I think it's much more user-friendly, the way the user interface is. A lot more icons, less clicks. But the starting place for responsive design is what we call breakpoints. So that's one of the first things that you have to decide is, what are my breakpoints going to be? Now, let me be very, very clear. Those are just starting points. When you preview, you're really previewing for every size device in between those breakpoints. The breakpoints are just the starting points. So these are the breakpoints. Up here at the top here, you've got the primary breakpoint, which by default is at 1024. It can go as high as 1280. The tablet breakpoint is 768. And then you have the mobile breakpoint. Now, the default breakpoint when you open up a brand new Captivate project is 360. You'll notice I've changed mine to 452, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But that's what you have to decide, or what are my starting breakpoints? How many of you guys know what size device your customers are using? Okay, so if you know what size device your customer is using, you've got a head start. And if you don't know, then you're developing for every size device out there. But one of the things that you could do is there's a website called viewportsizes.com. And if you go to viewportsizes.com/mine, you'll see the resolution of your computer. So this computer is 1263 by 725. But if you just go to viewportsizes.com, you can look up the size of any size device out there, pretty much, right? So let's say I'm going to take away the mine. Okay, and then if I do a filter, say I have an Android, if I could spell. So if I have an Android, portrait width is 768, landscape width is 1024. So if you know specifically what size devices your customers are using, this is where you start, and that's how you get your breakpoints, because that's going to be the best resolution for your customers. Okay? Any questions about that? Yes? Yeah, absolutely. Browsers are, when you publish a responsive project, it publishes only as an HTML5, but all browsers, well, in theory, all browsers, output in HTML5 as well.
So as long as the desktops have a modern browser that can play HTML5, you should be fine. So the only case you'll have an issue is if, and we do hear those cases where certain customers have really older versions of browsers. That's where you'll still need the Swift content to play. Like
IE9.
Yeah. I mean, you still have IE6 and IE7. It's IE7, typically IE6, IE7.
Yeah.
Really old versions of browsers. So.
Okay, maybe I'll check with you guys offline on that.
Yeah, sure.
It is kind of a situation.
Okay. All right. So let me show you. This is the one that I created for you guys as a gimme way. And let me just preview it for you so that you can see it. It's not the best example of responsive design, but it's one I created. So. All right. So you see in preview mode, you have your 3 breakpoints. Now, your customers will not see the breakpoints, and they will not see, if you notice the slider underneath the breakpoints, they will not see that. This is only for development purposes, for you as a developer, so that you can see what it's going to look like without having to publish. So this is what it would look like on a 1024 by 627, and the height can change as well. Right now, we're just doing the width. And then if I click on these, I can see, okay, well, I've made this more of a portrait. It's long. And then here's more of the cell phone view. And if I use my slider, I can see what this is going to look like. If you can see the number in the middle of the screen there as it goes down, you can see the text responding. You can see the objects responding. So pretty much any size device in between there. And you see where it broke? That's your breakpoint. Okay? So it went from mobile to tablet right there. okay? And you can see how everything changes. There was the other breakpoint. So right there, and now it gets wider and wider, okay? So when you preview, that's one of the things that you have to remember is you're not just previewing these breakpoints here, which all look probably pretty good. You have to preview in the other breakpoints if you don't know what size device your output is. Okay. All right. So there's a really, so the way that Captivate has done this is really clever. So instead of having 3 different breakpoints and you've got 3 different projects, you've got a relationship between the breakpoints. So if you think of the primary breakpoint as the parent, the tablet breakpoint as the child, and the mobile breakpoint as the grandchild, they're all connected. So the parent's got control over the grandchild and the child until they get to be teenagers, right? So if I put an object on this slide, for instance, well, let's just use, I don't think you have all the images, do you? I'm going to just,
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
You can take the first.
Yeah. All right, so if I put a character on this slide, and I have her selected, and I go to my Properties panel over on the right-hand side, and I go to my Position Inspector. So you notice the green at the top, I've got her selected, and all my boxes for my size and position are green. If I click the tablet, my boxes are still green. That means that the link has not been broken. They're still connected. And same thing, my boxes are still green, although the top is orange. Watch what happens, though. So if I change her size and position, let's just put her down here. She's going to change in both the other viewpoints, the breakpoints. Now, it looks like she's moving up because she's changing percent relative to the size of the slide. That's by design. But if I change her in the tablet view, if I move her and change her size, look what happens. My boxes turn blue. So now, that's when the child has become the teenager and is rebelling against the parent and saying, I don't want to link with you anymore. I'm independent, I'm on my own. And now if I make a change in the primary view, it's not going to affect where she's located or the size of her in the tablet view. Okay? But the child still has control right now of the grandchild. So she's still in the same size and location by percent relative to the size of the slide. If I change her, now, if I change her back, something like that, now she turned orange, and now all 3 are linked. So now, if you make a change to any of them on any of the breakpoints, they will not change the size and position. Does that make sense? Okay. It's an important kind of concept to get, because you have to remember which breakpoint you're on. And believe me, you're going to make the mistake. And you're going to be like, how do I get the link back? Guess what? You can't unless you delete it and reinsert it. There's no magic button. Or Control-Z, Control-Z, Control-Z before you save. Right?
So
yes, ma'am.
So are you saying that all changes should be made in the parent in order to not use the links?
Well, I'm telling you that it's going to make it easier in the sense of creating a course, and if you have edits, and then it will filter down. However, it works pretty well for primary and tablet, but when you get to mobile, because it's such a small screen, you're going to have to make those changes. There's going to be objects and assets on those screens that you're going to have to change, because all of those assets are not going to fit on that tiny device. So you're going to have to make those changes. You can also change the height. So there's a very tiny click box up in the upper right-hand corner there that says View Height. By default, the height is on at 627. Adobe said, okay, well, most people will probably use the play bar, so that's why it's there. So if you're not using the play bar, you could change the height to, what's the normal, 728? And the way that you would do that is you just drag this at the bottom here down. Now what's cool about this is that it changes the height in the primary, but not in the tablet or the mobile. So for instance, with the scenario I gave you, I made the height 768 for primary, but check out my tablet. It's 997, because I figured most people would want to look at this in portrait view, right? And that will maintain through the project, but independent of each slide. And then the mobile is 450. So you can independently change the height of each view, which is cool. How are you guys doing? Am I losing you? No? You're good? Okay. All right, so don't break the link. Now, I teach this class normally in 3 hours, so this really is M-Warp at M-Speed, or whatever our title is, right? Warp speed. So you're going to get a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So one of the other things that you can do is you can create your own theme, and it can be, and the themes that are in there right now are responsive, and there are 11 out-of-the-box responsive themes that you can very easily customize to your own agency branding. And what's really cool about that is that those theme colors that you customize, not only do you save them, but you can apply them to any other object or text that you insert into your slide with that very, very quickly and easily. You guys want me to show you that real quick? You're falling asleep. No, the guy in front of you. All right, so if I select theme colors, I could I could use any of these out-of-the-box theme colors, right? But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to do a new project so that I don't mess up this one. All right, and I got to do a new responsive project. That would help. So I could select any one of these themes, the out-of-the-box themes. They're all nicely responsive for you. But if I decide I want to change these colors, I go to Theme Colors, and I can apply any one of these themes, or I can customize these themes. And I specifically picked this one because it's very obvious, the changes. So I can make all these changes. And it's going to look funky, but let's just go with it. Okay? And then what happens is I could actually have gone back to Theme Colors, Customize, and I could have actually named it something different, like my agency name. But look what happens when I insert a shape into this, and I go to my fill. These are the theme colors, that top line are the theme colors that I just chose. So they're always readily available for you, which is really, really cool, huge time saver. Okay. So a little bit more about size and position. We have some definitions. Can you keep track of my time for me, please? Okay. So if you have an object selected on your slide, and you notice these boxes, they have percent, pixels, auto, and percent relative. Percent means that the object is going to respond according to the size of the device based on the percent of the size of the device. So watch, I'll show you. So this character right here, she is set for top left. She's attached to the top left. Height is auto and width is percent. I could do a percent. And she looks like she is, I'll go back to auto. That didn't look good. Okay. So she will adjust, her size will adjust according to the size of the device. So she looks like she's getting smaller, but she's responding to the size of the device by percent. So her percent stays the same. If I turn my smart position on, you'll see that as long as I haven't broken the link, she'll stay 18% from the top and 71% from the left, no matter what size device I am in, as long as I haven't broken the link, right? So she's the same size and position relative to the size of the device by percent. If I want to link her, notice she was going up. Anybody like get disconcerted about that? Like a person should be linked to the bottom, right? All you would have to do is connect her to the bottom instead of the top. And now she'll stay down to the bottom. Okay? All right, auto of an object means that they maintain aspect ratio. So you notice that when I changed the height to percent, she got discombobulated, what's the word? Their proportions got messed up, right? So the auto was maintaining her proportions. If I change the width to auto, which is what I've already done to here, watch what happens. When I change my breakpoints, her width stays the same, so she looks like she is larger on the screen instead of shrinking. Okay, so auto means that she maintains aspect ratio. That was the word I was looking for. All right, and then you guys probably know what pixels mean, don't you? Who knows what pixels mean? Yes? Right, yes. It's really the absolute size, right? It's the exact size. So if I make her 494 pixels by 281 pixels, watch what happens in the different size devices. Now she's looking like she's getting bigger instead of smaller, and ginormous in the mobile device, right? Because the device is shrinking, but she's staying the same size. Make sense? All right, there's one more with size and position, and this is a pretty cool one. This one is called percent relative. And this one is, for instance, I've got a highlight box, and I've got another image, and I want the highlight box to stay over the image. Watch what happens if I don't do percent relative, if I just do the default, which is this for both of them. I'll change them back. So the default settings are this: top left, height, auto, width, percent. So for both objects, I've got the default settings. If I go to my different views, whoops, it didn't change it. Oh, it's probably because I had broken the link. Okay, let me delete that one and insert a new one. Okay, so, and I got to make sure I've got the default settings for all of these guys here now. Okay, so if I have the default settings for both objects, they're not going to stay together. So they're going to move. So the box is not going to stay over the exact place I want it to. So percent relative means that the objects are staying together relative to each other. But I have to do it for both objects. So if you notice, I go back, I take this image, and I make it percent relative from the bottom and percent relative height. And then I'm going to do the same for this one. Percent relative to the bottom, percent relative height. Make sure left width. Got to make sure all. And then now, oh, because I have to change these guys. Oh, I have to do. I had already broken the link. I promise you it works. Okay, let me just do 2 more real quick so that you do see, since I'm not on my own computer. Okay, I'm just going to do 2 different color boxes, right? Percent relative, percent relative, percent relative, percent relative, and now they'll stay together. Okay? So it's not that hard to do. It's just see what happens when you break the link. So you have to remember. Okay, questions about any of that? Size and position. Check this out. I'm going to preview this so that you guys could see this. Oh, how long? 10? Okay. Oops. All right. So these are all the different size and positions that you can do, right? They're just different colored boxes, but the position of them in the properties panel is exactly what you see on the slide. When I move it, watch what happens to the objects. They look like they're moving, right? This is why size and position is so important and responsive. Because now look what's happening. They're overlapping. They're not looking very good at this point, right? If this was a real eLearning project, your person would not be getting the content they needed, right? And some of them are completely disappearing. So size and position is basically the nut and bolts. And he just told me I've got like less than 10 minutes, so I'm going to skip over a couple of these because I just want to get to, this one's very, very cool. So if you wanted to have an object on the large primary view because you've got much more real estate, but not on the tablet and the mobile view, a very easy way to do that would be to right-click on the object and say, as long as you haven't broken the link, say exclude from other views. That means exclude from other breakpoints. So you'll see her in the primary, but not in the tablet or the mobile. Now, she doesn't get deleted. She just moves off to the side. Yes, ma'am? You can,
Yeah, so you're really only screwing that maybe from like the phone size, right? And that's possible to do, that at the child level.
well, what would, if you were in the tablet and you said exclude from other views, it would exclude it from the primary and the mobile. So if you just want to exclude it from the mobile, here's what you do. Super easy. Let me just make this a little smaller. So this is the mobile view. If you don't want it on the mobile, but you want it on the tablet and the primary, guess what? Just boop, drag them off to the side. Okay? You can't delete them because you only have one object on the timeline. If you delete it, you're deleting it from all 3 views. Okay? So that's essentially how you would rearrange the mobile view, is by physically just moving them. Of course, you're breaking the link, but you're going to have to do that. Now, the other really, really cool thing about this is that the Object Style Manager, who's using the Object Style Manager? Awesome. You guys are saving a ton of time, right, by using the Object Style Manager. If you're not using it, I hope that you will use it after this class. Edit Object Style Manager. All right. Even without responsive, you should be using it. But what you can do here is I have cloned these defaults and just named them my own names. But here, you have your breakpoints. So in the primary view, I want it to be green and 28 font and Arial family and all my settings. And then in the tablet view, I want it to be blue and 20 font. And in the mobile view, I want it to be orange. If I want to change it, let's say I want to change it to red here and make it a little larger. Now I can click OK. And any object that is attached to this style, the style I called color, will change globally throughout my project. Kind of like that, yeah. All right, so let's see what style I gave this one. Let's see, okay, let's change it to color. Now I've got my blue and I've got my red. Pretty cool. Sweet, easy, fun, right? This stuff is fun. All right, who's doing simulations? All right, you guys want to create responsive simulations? Captivate 8 can do that. All right, it took me, and I've been using Captivate for a while, but it took me a little while to find out how do I actually, like I kept going to File, Record New Software Simulation, and I was like, but it's not responsive. What's going on? You know, I had to call them. I'm like, how? All right, so what you do, you click plus. You're in a responsive project. You're in a responsive project already. You've already opened a responsive project. You click the plus on the slides and then say software simulation. And because of time's sake, I already created an example for you. What it does, it will insert it after whatever slide you're on, right? And this was a simulation I did on Adobe Edge Animate. And what it does is, it's so cool. It automatically takes wherever your mouse is, where you click your mouse, and it makes that the focus. So as I'm in a tablet, you'll see over here on the right side of my screen, it's got the rest of the slide still there. It's just cutting it off because it won't fit on the tablet-sized device. But it's focusing around where I'm clicking my mouse. And even cooler, on the mobile, check that out. And Captivate does a really good job of this. Now, you're still going to have to edit. You're probably going to have to move the captions around a bit and the click boxes just like you would do with any other simulation. But it does a great job with this. And this is all because of this one little click right here. Use portion of background image is on by default. If you turn that off, I don't know why you would, but if you deselect that, then the entire slide goes into that mobile device. But you probably wouldn't want to do that. How am I doing on my time? Okay. Because you still got to do your case studies. Okay. All right. Anybody using the Creative Cloud? Got Edge Inspect? You can preview your projects using Adobe Edge Inspect. If you have the Creative Cloud, you can preview the projects using Adobe Edge Inspect. Now, I'm not on my computer right now. My computer crashed last night. If you have Adobe Edge Inspect on your computer, and you have it on your device, you can sync your computer and your device, and when you go to preview your project, you can go to Preview in Adobe Edge Inspect, and you can actually see it on your device that you're using without publishing. Sweet, right? And you should be testing these a lot to make sure everything's functioning the way you want it to.
You can hit it in the desktop browser.
Do I?
You can hit Preview in Edge Inspect.
Oh, I can?
Yeah.
Let's try. Oh, you have it?
It should just show you in the desktop browser.
Ah, okay.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's going to ask for your
Oh.
location.
So you see, this is just going through the simulation that I did. But what it's doing, see at the top, it's taking the size of the device that I'm on. If I was on a mobile phone, it would show that size. Make sense? Okay. You can also turn on gesture control. You go to Window up at the top here, and you go to Mobile Palette, Window, Mobile Palette, and gesture configuration, I think it's on by default, isn't it? Yeah, it's on by default, so that when somebody's using their mobile device, they can use their fingers to swipe and all of that stuff. Just be advised that if you have branching, like the course that I gave you, it has buttons that branch to different slides. If they use a swipe, that will trump the button. So most of my courses are not linear, and so I usually turn this off. But it's an option. All right, and then publishing. When you go to publish, you will notice that it says HTML5. So it's only publishing an HTML5 output, not Swift. And it looks very different than Captivate 7, right? But if you wanted to use SCORM, the eLearning output, it says disabled right now. All you would do is click on that, and it just takes you right to that preference box where you can turn it all back on. Okay? All right, if you were not here earlier, this is the link to download the scenario responsive project and also a copy of the PowerPoint. And we're going to turn it, I'm going to turn it back over to Akshay if you guys don't have any more questions for me right now. And he's going to talk about the two cases that we've been working with a couple of gals.
If you look at the interactions that are built on the desktop versus the mobile, you see that the focus on the mobile is clearly, on the content that's being there. And this is an example of a responsive simulation. So when we go back and talk to these users and ask them, what is the kind of time it takes for you to create these? So if they were to create this on their own, it would take 4x or 5x the time because you would have to capture, set it up, and test across each of these. But now with responsive simulations, where Captivate can intelligently know where the action is, where the user is engaging with the learning content, we can automatically pan to that area as you go. And that was the biggest benefit in a responsive simulation scenario. The second situation is where this is more of a traditional setup where you had different SCORM modules put together. And this was how it was organized. And there was a bunch of modules, and each of those modules would lead to either content or to a quiz like we have down there. So what they wanted was clicking on each of the options should give you custom feedback, and if you got some of the options wrong, being able to tell you why that's wrong and so on. And they wanted the users to actually play around with these buttons to figure out why they were getting these options wrong. So what they found interesting was you look at it looks like a very small difference when you look at it, but when you look at the experience as a learner, it's pretty big, because when you look at the experience there, right, so you have an image on the left, but you don't have that image on the mobile device. And the way you're representing information right here, so they have a small play bar at the bottom. They've chosen to have a smaller version of it, but we've seen customers also do away with certain things on the play bar. So you can do away with the front and back, and you can just have, let's say, a submit and not have the navigation piece in the play bar. So those are options that you can have. But essentially what it means is now you have the option to even control navigation options, as well as what you display, as well as what form factor you're putting it in. And all of that can be put together. And this particular example is more closer to what we think is a typical way of using responsive. So one is a simulation example, the other is a non-simulation example. So what we're seeing is people are getting over the hump of thinking responsive, which is what Anita was speaking about, wherein you don't understand size and position. You don't understand how do I place objects from a responsive mindset. But we see that once users spend about an hour or so, you get a hang of these basic concepts, then it's really quick for you to actually put things together and push the content out. And that really makes a big difference when you look at the output. And when somebody looks at the output, they're absolutely amazed with what it looks like. And they have no idea how much time went behind it, because it does look like this kind of took a lot of back and forth to get it forward. So given that, go ahead.
Do you have any demos that give the comparisons where I can watch it at a large format, a tablet format? I'm just trying to get an idea of what we're losing.
So we have some examples built into Captivate as well. And if you send me an email, I can send you more examples too. So we have example projects and video demos built inside the product. And you can actually play around with those to get a sense of. And we have those source files as well.
But I mean, do you have like a website I can go to and just watch it on different client devices?
Yes. So you can actually play that out as well on your device. Yeah. Cool. So I just wanted to run by a quick set of questions now that we have folks that are interested in. So one question I had was, a show of hands would help. Would you really consider authoring on a tablet? How many of you would like to author on a tablet? So how many of you would like to create content, not use the desktop at all, but create content on a tablet? That's about 5. How many of you would consider just designing on the tablet but developing on the desktop? In the sense that how many of you would, let's say, storyboard or prototype on the tablet but create on the desktop? Okay. And that's one piece of responsive that that we're interested in. The second piece is, how do you manage all of these resources put together, right? Is there a way that you can bring your apps, courses, and resources together? So that's an area that we've been looking at, and that's really a question of what can make responsive more complete. Responsive today, when we look at responsive today, it's more of a consumption experience, but can it move on to the authoring side, and can it actually make the whole experience more unified? That's an area that we're also looking at. The next question I have for you is, do your learners face bandwidth concerns, or do your learners call back and tell you, I'm facing an issue because it's too slow? How many of you hear that? Sure. And that's really, that's the reality of the game. So we have to figure out what optimizations we can do, or is there a way to deliver content at that lower bandwidth in a way that makes sense? Is security of content a concern? Is security of, so when I say security, I'm talking of, let's say, device gets lost. What do you do, right? What do you do today? What do you do with this concern? You can't lock their devices, right? You have learners who are coming in with their own devices. So you do install certificates and you can remote wipe them from your IT, but it's still a big concern because, employees keep losing phones, right? I mean, you don't know how to really manage this. And that's also, if there is a way, that we can help in managing that concern, that's also something that we're exploring. So apart from a traditional way to look at responsive, these are some of the areas that we also want to solve to have a complete story on, I would say mobile, not just responsive. So that covers, what we had to talk about today. I don't know how much time we have. We have just about a couple of minutes. So what we could do is, we're going to be right here, and you can drop by and ask us questions. Did you have anything else, Anita? No, cool.
No, well, we've got a few minutes for questions now.
Yeah,
Do you guys have any questions for
Our
us?
emails are here, so if you have, you can always write to us. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you had asked about some examples from responsive. There are a couple of different mobile sessions today. I know that Dustin and I, when we do our sessions, we're going to show an example of how we built our app responsive. So if you want to see one while you're here today, there's an example. And then there's also, I know that Pooja and Kirsten are also doing a session on responsive.
Pooja's right at the back. Yeah.
So you can see a couple of examples here today too.
Another question I have is interactivity, like the training, the online training we do, we have a lot of quizzes, and I haven't worked a lot with the whole mobile stuff yet, so I'm just curious, how do you handle quizzes, and how do you get interactivity going?
Yeah, you could open. Yeah.
Yeah, it does
You
it
want to
very
show
well.
Yeah, so that's one of the core pieces of how this is built, and interactivity is actually at the core of building these. So it does work very well, and being able to build responsive quizzes is actually at the core of responsive design. So you should be able to do it. Anita may be able to quickly show you how to do it.
So this isn't a very good, let's do a quiz.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
I guess my question is more of,
Oh, that's not responsive.
we can build a quiz, but from the client's end, if you're on a tablet or if you're on an Android or whatever, does it interact the same? In other words, am I able to stop it, start it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I can talk with you right after the session on how you can implement that through, but that's definitely possible. Sure. Thanks a lot then, guys. And we have our, you can bring up the email. So
Yeah.
Do write to us if you have any questions. And thanks again.